Welcome, everyone, to the Nostalgia Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Mars, and like you, I love just remembering different things from our childhood, whether it be games, movies, music, books, or even just childhood memories of different things we've done or family vacations. So I am very excited to go on this little trip down memory lane with all of you, and I hope you stick around for the rest of the show. Hello, all my nostalgia nerds! Today we have an amazing guest, a very good friend of mine, the amazingly talented M. Mercer, coming to you all the way from Fargo, North Dakota.
Hello.
M, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure. Seth, my name is M. Mercer. I am a big theater fan. Big theater person in North Dakota. Which, as you can imagine, theater up here isn't really the best. Not as big as fancy New York. I've been in theater for most of my life. I think since I was 6 years old. And it has continued to be my number one passion.
Well, awesome. I love how you introduced theater because that is our topic tonight. I know both of us were very involved in the theater scene in Fargo when we were in high school. You more so on the community theater side, me in the high school theater productions over at Fargo South, and obviously I also did a few community theater shows. How involved would you say you were during high school with theater, whether it was at the actual high schools or in the community theater classes or just volunteering in general?
So for my high school, I was never in any of the big musicals or plays. All of the high school shows that were happening during my time were very dance heavy shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not a dancer. I cannot dance. I've tried. I've had teachers tell me you cannot dance. So I've come to accept that that's just a weak spot for me. I was very much more. I was in the theater. I took every theater class in school, and I took a lot of classes outside of school. Here in not in North Dakota, it's over in Moorhead in Minnesota. They have a big acting school called Trollwood, which is a summer program. And I went to that every year except for my senior year. I couldn't do it that year. But actually, probably the best I didn't do it that year. I was in a different production. So I did a couple other, I did a lot of the community stuff. We have a place called FMCT, which is the big head honcho of theater in Fargo. So I did a couple of their shows, but yeah, nothing really for high school, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do agree on that, how, there's the two different sides of theater in Fargo Moorhead is, you have the high schools that are obviously doing high school theater programs, and then there's a big influence in the community, especially in the summer, because, high schools aren't open in the summer, and, in the summer, I know, yes, we have Trollwood out in Moorhead. That's the big one that people go out for, but then there's also FMCT does a few summer shows. They do, 2 summer musicals a year?
I believe so. For the longest time, they did just one.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when they started. And I always remember when they started because that was when I started really getting into theater. I was when they first introduced their children's theater program, or children's studio theater, whatever that was called. The year they started was the year that I went in. So I started with them.
Yeah.
And I was in their first 3 shows for the summer program.
And then another big one, which I was mainly in my last 2 years of high school, which was Gooseberry Park Players, and that is run also in Moorhead.
That was run by MSUM, right?
Yes, it
Or was
was.
that by Concordia?
Okay, so Gooseberry, they're their own essential one. They originated in Gooseberry Park,
Yep.
which is right across from Lindenwood Park, right across from the river, and they realized that they weren't going to be able to outfit their stage like Trollwood did, so they could have the big, outdoor shows. So then, at first they partnered with Concordia, and then
That's
the year
right.
that I started in it, and the 2 years that I was in it, they were at MSUM when MSUM still had their theater program.
Yep.
And the 2 shows that I did there with them, I was in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and I ran tech for Big Fish, which that was really fun running tech for that one.
It was really good. I saw that production. It
You
was really,
did?
really good. Yeah, I saw Good Fish.
Nice. Yeah, no, I was behind the
Very,
scenes
very
with that
good.
one a lot, which I was very happy to do 1 year on stage and 1 year off stage after high school, which what a lot of people don't know about me is that I actually started behind the scenes in theater, which sort of shone through when we first met, when we were part of our big production together.
Yeah.
I was more of like the technical actor looking at everything on stage because I started out at Fargo South in their technical crew, and their technical director there was kind of mad when I kind of switched over my last 2 years for the musical because they were both really big. They were both really big shows set wise, and he was mad that he lost one of his big, strong tech people to the cast.
I can imagine. I can just imagine Wilhelmy just.
Yeah,
So sad.
Mr. Dave Wilhelmy, he was mad. Although I did save the show for Les Mis one night by strong arming a 60-pound table off stage, and they came back during intermission, and they were like, "Who strong armed the table off stage?" And me, coming off a viral infection, was holding a water bottle, going, "Me."
That sounds about right.
That sort of leads into my next question because obviously I started on the technical side and then they welcomed me into the acting side. Do you think that, the high school theater programs and the community theater programs in Fargo Moorhead are inclusive to all genders, religions, nationalities, sexualities, etc.?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I definitely believe that they're very inclusive. I've never heard or experienced any type of discrimination or any type of prejudice, nothing. And if anything ever comes up, it's squashed immediately. Like, it's immediately like, nope, you don't do this here, you're out.
Yeah, I can agree with that because I believe during my junior year when we were doing Legally Blonde, we had cast a few of the football players in it, and football players have their own sort of mindset, but we just had one that was just really, he just was not a good guy, and he was very, very prejudiced towards a bunch of the different cast members because they were either LGBT, different race or different religion, and ultimately our theater director pulled him aside and he said, "Hey, if you can't handle being on a cast like this or just in general around people like this, you need to say goodbye to this program because we do not tolerate that here."
Good. Yeah, that sounds right, knowing the director.
Yeah.
He doesn't put up with that. No, I will say though, if you're new, if you're like just starting in, like if you're an outsider just coming in, especially in the high school area, you're gonna have an uphill climb.
Yeah,
because I've noticed that a lot of directors and especially surprisingly a lot of the music directors are very hesitant and very they don't want to take chances on people.
Yeah.
They like their little clique of stars.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the ones that are going to get the main roles every year. If you're lucky, if you're new and you're really, really lucky, you could possibly get either a side character or most likely you're going to get ensemble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can.
It's very tough for really new people. At least here, I don't know where it's like everywhere else, but I've heard horror stories of people who are just coming in, who just discovered their love of theater, and they weren't given that time, that opportunity to grow.
Mm-hmm. I, for one, can personally agree with that one because a lot of my peers over Fargo South, I know Eve Hansen and Bryn Brotherson, they both had older siblings go through the theater program there. Mason Brotherson was a phenomenal actor, and Audra Hansen was a phenomenal actor. Ironically, my brother went to school with at least Audra, so my brother knew Audra, except my brother wasn't into that side of the high school. He was more of a misbehaving
Yeah.
He was mainly ROTC, which I also did, but I found my 8th grade year that I really loved theater. I loved being on stage, and I decided to stick with it through high school. And because nobody knew me, I had a very tough time getting cast and stuff. I got cast in very small roles my freshman year just because a whole bunch of family stuff happened. I got into one act that year. I didn't really do anything my sophomore year. I was mainly focusing on tech that year. But then junior and senior year, I was able to get on stage, and then that kind of propelled me to the future to where now I'm out in New York for school.
Yeah.
For that. But I mean, a lot of, even if you're not on stage, a lot of the directors will know of you, because I know back at South, Kevin Kennedy knew you, and he would talk about you, and when I go back home and I've let it slip that I'm friends with you, he's like, oh, Emily Mercer? Yeah, I know her. It's just amazing what, you know.
It's nice to be remembered.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not always the best, but I think he liked me mostly because I actually did my work. I actually did what I was supposed to be doing.
That is a that is a good thing to do with Mr. Kevin Kennedy, is to get your work done and actually do work in class when you're told to.
I'll tell one like very small story. We were doing something. We were supposed to be rehearsing our 2-person scenes. Well, there was an issue in the theater, something due to the musical, and Kennedy had to leave to go into the theater while we were in the black box, which is, if you guys don't know, it's like the little area behind the backstage.
Yeah, it's like a, for people at home watching, we have like our proscenium theater, which is like your basic theater, and then there's, it like goes in, and then behind all the curtains there's just like a brick wall, and there are 2 doors on either side, and one of those doors leads into our actual theater classroom, which is our black box, which is another little stage that we can use if we want to, but we never really use it for anything. It's just like our theater class.
It's basically theater class, and we're to hang out backstage so you can actually quietly talk.
Yeah,
other than being backstage where you cannot talk at all.
No, a lot of people between scenes, like if they have really long periods between scenes, they'll just go there and just listen to what's happening on stage.
Exactly. So nobody else was actually working on their scenes. Everyone else was on their phones and messing around.
Mm-hmm.
I went up to my scene partner like, hey, let's go rehearse. He's like, okay. So we went and we knocked out like 3-4 rehearsals. Like maybe more. We were the only ones that actually presented because nobody else did it. I think that's why Kennedy liked me. I actually did what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. There were quite a few kids in my class that were slackers, but me and a few other kids were kind of trustworthy on that. Yeah. Going off of something that we were previously talking about, you know, having to have like at least a member of your family already in theater, or like the teachers already knowing you. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to get known. Do you think that other people in the community or in the school were favorited for different roles, or did they distribute the roles fairly?
Oh my gosh, yeah, there is favoritism up the wazoo over here. Like, mostly it's been, I've noticed in the high school scene, it's been very much a problem. And I could name like all the favorites of South when I was there. I could name them all because they were very much like praised. They were the ones who always got the leads, always was like, we're always there. And it was very tough. It was very tough for the other people who, weren't the favorites to feel welcomed. Because they basically, like, and I understand, we're human beings. We have biases. But there's something about theater teachers which I don't know what it is, but they do not like change. I remember there was one, we went from the musical to, I don't remember which one it was. Who knows? It could have been all, I don't remember. But there was one where it went from the musical to the play. They cast the exact same people. There was nobody different in that cast. Like, no one. And I noticed, because I didn't audition. Because it was around that time where I was accepting, I'm not going to get in. I've accepted this as a fact. I'm not a favorite. I'm not well known enough for me to actually stick in people's minds. So that's a point where I'm just like, I'm just doing community theater stuff. I'm not even bothering with high school stuff. And I looked at the cast, I'm like, this is the same cast as the musical. Like, verbatim. This is the exact same cast.
And
like, all the parts are very similar to what they played in the musical. Like,
and then, do you think, because you said that you then mainly focused on community theater, do you think community theater directors have a bias on who they want in their show from the community, or are they more fair than what you see in the high school setting?
I'd like to say they're a little bit more fair, but it's also more mixed. It's kind of like pawn shops. You never know what's going to walk in the door. It's true, because with high schools, you have a very select group of kids that are going to be the ones in theater.
Yeah.
Like, but with community, new people are trying theater every day. Like, take for my friend, one of my best friends, Lori. She just started theater like 2 years ago at my suggestion, and she's doing awesome. She's been getting into shows. She's been doing theater classes. We've been doing theater classes together. People know her now.
Yeah.
But like 2 years ago, nobody in the theater department knew who she was.
Yeah, I agree with that. High school theater, they're very biased on who they want because they know their strengths. They work with those kids all the time.
Yeah.
They have their favorites. They say they don't have their favorites, but they do.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Yeah, and then I notice more when I graduated from high school, or even when I did community theater throughout my last few years. Because Gooseberry, the first year that I did it, I wasn't expecting on getting in. I only auditioned on the request of the director at the time because I was in her choir at the high school for 2 years. And she pushed me to go out for that show. And, I competed with kids from like 22 different schools in North Dakota and Minnesota. And I ended up getting cast in the ensemble for that, which was really fun. That show kind of like solidified that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But it didn't really set in until after I was out of high school that, community theater doesn't really have a bias on who they want. because I was, since high school, I've been in, I want to say, at least 2 community shows. You know, I did a ed show for students at FMCT, and then I was in the show that we met in, which honestly I was not expecting to get cast in that because it had been over a year since I had done a musical. But, you know, it all works out, and now I'm going to school to do something that I love and that I want to do for the rest of my life. Which brings me to one of the biggest questions that I have on this list is, obviously I shouldn't have to ask this, but I'm doing it for the sake that it's a question on here. Did you continue with theater after high school, and is it something that you see yourself doing in the long run?
No, I was never in another show again. Yes, I have done. There's one show that I've been a part of. I've been a part of the show since 2016. Because I was helping.
I know what show you're talking about too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. It was a regional. It was a show that was made locally, and I was a part of it for. Heck, I'm still a part of it.
Yeah, because we're still
can't get rid of me
going.
now.
There's still like a whole bunch of stuff for being thrown around, and all of us want to get back together and do something for the show.
Yeah, no, I was part of that. I'm trying to think what big ones I've done. I did a murder mystery, which was really fun. Because of COVID, I wasn't able to be in a lot of shows. I've been doing a lot of what's known as Zoom read-throughs, which is a bunch of people, which is basically a bunch of people on Facebook finally had enough and wanted to do theater again. So we got a whole group together, and there are multiple groups.
Oh yeah, and there's people from like all over the world on those groups.
All over the world.
In the show that you just recently produced, which I was honored to be a part of, we had somebody from Belgium in it.
Yep.
Yeah, because it was like still daytime for all of us, and then it was like almost 10 o'clock at night for her.
It's about 9 o'clock. Yeah, for that.
For them, yes. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
You see the flag in the background. I try to do my best with pronouns, but you know.
I guess you. So yeah, we did. So I've been doing a couple of basically what they are. They're just read-throughs of shows. Some of them legal, some of them
not so legal. We don't record the ones that aren't legal unless like we want them for like personal use.
Exactly. So so then the last actual show that I have done is I did something with FMCT. I did we have a thing here because it's North Dakota, it's cold.
Yeah.
We had to embrace it somehow. We have a thing every year called a Frostable. And this year we did a 30-minute review show. Basically, it was a bunch of Disney and choir pieces, semi-strung together to make a semi-plot. And a funny thing about that is I was the oldest person in that cast.
Oh no!
Everyone else was like,
and
12,
you're
13,
only what? You're only 23.
I'm only 23. I was the oldest person in that cast. Because everyone else is like 12, 13, 14. I think the youngest we had like a bunch of little kids too.
Yeah.
Like, little. I think the youngest we had was like 6.
Oh, that's so cute when you see little kids going out for theater.
It was very cute. It was very fun to see. And I sometimes see those older kids, or like the older kids, because they do a lot of the acting classes that they have now there. And I was in a couple, and I was in an acting class one day, and I just hear M. I turn around to see all these like preteens running at me, hugging me. I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, hi, how are you? It was very fun. So I'm hoping to do more. I'm doing an acting class I'm going to be doing an acting class again soon with a really good teacher, Hardy Koenig, who's really big up here. So I'm very excited, and hopefully more shows will be on the horizon once things can be normal again.
Yeah, hopefully this summer we'll get back to a semi-normal theater community.
I'm really hoping. I'm really hoping.
I know we touched on this, which I have a feeling that this is going to be your answer to this question, but what is the biggest production you've had either at school or in community theater?
The biggest production?
Yeah.
I would probably say Weather the Storm. That's probably been the biggest. That's definitely been the biggest one of my career. Basically, what Weather the Storm was in 1957 in Fargo, North Dakota. There was a huge tornado that went through basically destroyed North Fargo, which was called the Ridge at the time.
No, we still sometimes mention like the Golden Ridge neighborhood because that's just kind of stuck there.
It's one of those things that just kind of stuck. And a couple of my friends, Tracy Frank and Topher Williams, they decided to write a musical about it. So I was a part of that production since about 26, or technically I've been aware of the project since 2014, but I was really an active player in 2016. And then 2019, we actually performed it.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of news coverage. Me, Topher, and another actor from the show named Jay, we actually went on the radio and talked about it. We were sold out every night except the first night. It's like, dang, we were sold out all night.
Yeah, what was the reason why we didn't sell out that night? Was it just because we didn't have enough coverage at that point to get
No, we had enough coverage. I think what happened was, I don't know what happened on that one. I think it was just because opening night was, I don't remember why we didn't sell out that night. I think we just didn't get the ticket sales for that night. And it was like a Thursday. No, it was a Thursday. So it's possible people were just busy or whatever. So not a big deal. But we sold out every other night. Yeah. And we went out for 2 weeks.
Yeah. And that was actually...
we did pretty good.
Yeah. For me, it was so surreal being part of a production like that. That's not necessarily the biggest show that I've been a part of, but it's definitely like the second biggest show that I've been a part of, just like time span wise. The biggest show that I've done, I would say Joseph, but our set for Les Mis was bigger than our set for Joseph. Yeah. Our set for Les Mis actually went all the way up to our catwalks. Yep. We actually had safety checks done every night up in those catwalks. We had techies walking around up there being like, okay, these are still secure. Actors can go on them. But not just like the set-wise, just like our cast-wise. And we cast it at the beginning of the year and we didn't perform it until spring. Because that was the one year that our shows were flip-flopped that year. Because usually South does the musical first and then they do the play. But just because it was such a big one, and our cassette was in Germany for first semester because
North
Dakota. I remember that. Yep, North Dakota does this thing where we partner with schools in Germany and we send kids there and we get kids from Germany for half a year. Yep. And what was interesting about that show too was we also had a kid from the Philippines in it too.
Oh, yep.
Yep, which was funny. And then we had a few kids that just like walked in one day and because we had one of the kids from Tech, Raymond, he asked Mr. Kennedy to be a part of it, and we were actually looking for a younger Jean Valjean, because our Jean Valjean was a person of color. He had the voice for it, and, you know, we had to have...
we love him.
He's awesome. Had to have somebody younger, rather than a 6 foot tall person of color, you know, playing the younger version of this, you know, 5'5" person of color. So we ended up going with Raymond, and he just kind of like walked on. And one of my friends from ROTC, he actually was just sitting there one day, and Kevin was like, hey, Hewlett, you want to be in the show? And he was like, I got ROTC stuff. And he looked at me, and we were both sitting in the audience. We were both wearing our uniforms. He's like, Clemson, what do you have going on for ROTC lately? And I was like, between now and the show, we only have Sioux Falls. He's like, great, Hewlett, you're in the show. And he ended up being our constable, and he was one
That
of the
sounds
most,
all right. No, you can. Yeah, that sounds all right.
we were just pulling kids left and right. But
Yep.
that and Weather the Storm have to be like the biggest shows that I've ever been a part of.
Well, if we're going by that for like the biggest, I think the second biggest for me would probably be Sideshow. I was in a production called Sideshow for a very small theater company. It only lasted about 2 years. It's called Spotlight Theater. It didn't last very long, which, yeah. And that was, if you don't know, that show is about the conjoined twins, Daisy and Violet Hilton, who were very big on big on Broadway and like the I'm trying to think what it's called. Well, first they were very big, in like the freak show scene, vaudeville. They were really big on vaudeville for a while. And that was probably the biggest, like, well-known show that I'd been a part of. Other than that, it was like Willy Wonka Jr. Like kind of the. I was in a regional production, it was called a regional production. Technically, it was the first time the show had been done in the United States, but then they were like, oh, we don't want this nothing town to be the national production. It's like whatever of a show called Schoolhouse. So yeah, yeah.
All right, and my very last question for you is, what's a funny story, like one of the most funny stories you have from a show?
Oh God, let me think. Funniest story I have from a show. I have so many of them.
Do you want me to share mine first, and maybe you'll get an idea?
Yeah, you share yours first.
Okay. As I said before, I did a lot of tech in high school, and my sophomore year we did a show called The Mouse That Roared. And what's interesting about our set was it was all on platforms, like different level platforms. So the entire set was at least 2 feet off the ground. Like at our lowest point, we were like 2 feet off the ground, and at our biggest point, we were like 3.5 feet off the ground, maybe even 5 feet. No, not 5 feet. 3.5 feet. But we had to run a whole bunch of electrical cables from one side where all our outlets were to the other side in order to push these large IBM computers out and make them light up and move. And me, being the rookie of the technical crew out of the upperclassmen, was handed a roll of gaff tape after we had all these cords laid out underneath. And like, all right, you get to army crawl under this set and tape down all these pieces at like 1 foot intervals. So I was like, great, guys, awesome. Nobody walk over me as we do it. We didn't tell the actors that I was under there, and they ended up, I was like taping stuff down, and all of a sudden I heard them walking around above me, and I'm on my belly, and I'm like, what can I do? What can I do to these actors to like just mess with them? And so I looked back at my friends and was like, watch this. And then they watched me just roll over onto my back, and I hear them, they're right above me, and my friends are back there. I'm watching my friends, and they're just like giggling because they see the actors directly above where I'm at. And I just go on this plywood part of this platform, and I just hear, it was a bunch of girls, and they just screamed and ran off stage. And they're like, what was that? What? Something just banged underneath the set. And we were all laughing, and I just rolled back onto my belly, and I finished taping stuff down, and then I just like crawl out, and they're still there, and I grab one of their feet, and they just go ballistic. They just run, and I crawl, and I was like, where are you going? I'm not done. We did the same thing to Kevin, too. Because they were like, quick, get under there and get Kevin. But yeah, no, Dave just laughed at us. He literally said over the mics, just like, stop scaring the actors and the director. Yeah, that was, yeah. We almost did the same thing for Romeo and Juliet, but we were warned before show. They're like, don't do the same thing you did a year ago. And we're like, oh, but that takes the fun out of it.
Okay.
What about you? You have to have something that tops that.
Okay. So, I was thinking like through the entire time, like, what do I have? So I'll just tell the story of the Weather the Storm pickup rehearsal.
This one definitely tops my story.
So basically, for Weather the Storm, we were on for 2 weekends. And we had about a 2-day break. Between.
Yeah, well,
So we had a 2-day break, but on Wednesday we were going to do pickup rehearsal.
Yeah, it was a 2-day break and then a pickup rehearsal.
Yeah, because Wednesday was pickup rehearsal.
Yeah.
So we got it, and we're all kind of groggy. We're all every one of us was kind of tired.
Yeah, and like me and one of our tech people like came from a daycare, so we were like, not wanting to deal with people after work.
Yeah. So we were all just kind of like, God, what are we doing, man? Well, one of our actresses was gone, or was flying in from somewhere. I don't remember where they were going. I don't remember where they were, but they were going to be at rehearsal that day, which was fine. And so we started. So we bunch of the people, bunch of the actors got mics when they weren't mic'd for the first run. So we had to test those out. Whatever. Okay.
We were nice about that portion of the rehearsal, at least.
Hold on. Don't get ahead of me. So basically, we start out the show because we're just going to run through the show, then we're going to be done. Just make sure we have everything fresh in our minds, then we're good. So we start out the show, which starts in a giant fair. And the actress that was gone had a solo during that song. So the guy who played her husband was like, soaring through the air, I can't find my bride. I can't find my bride. And so we all kind of just laugh a little bit. It's like, yeah, that's a good cover up since she's not here, whatever. So then at the end of that scene, at the end of the entire scene, the guy who played the love interest, Danny, was supposed to come up. I played the love interest, Susie. He was supposed to come up after Susie and her mom's song, kiss Susie, and then run away. Well, because he was one tangent I'll go on a little bit. I was 21 when we were doing this show. Our Danny was 14. And we had to kiss multiple times. Thank God we cut it down to 1. Because the 1 was an integral part of the story.
It was.
But God, was it uncomfortable. Luckily, it was just a quick, run. And I'm just like, ugh. Okay, so what he does, instead of running up and kissing me, is he grabs my hand, pulls it out, puts out a sheet of paper, closes it, kisses my cheek, and runs. And I'm like, I kind of look down, and he had a little piece of paper that had the word kiss on it. And I'm just like, Really? Okay.
The funny thing is, we watched him backstage just write it real quick. He was literally asking around backstage for a pen, and we're like, what the fuck do you need a pen for? And then we found out during that scene, we're like, that's what he needed the pen for. And then it just got worse from there too. Like we just ran with it.
So the moment that we knew this is done is the next scene. Susie's mom and Frank, who Mars played mom, they were talking at a table. And the lines are supposed to be, well, how many people do you know with a private carousel? What? Never mind, not the time. What our director and the writer of the show, mind you. So Evelyn asks, well, do you know anyone with a private carousel? Our writer of the show yells out, 5! She could have kissed at any of those. And we all lose it.
We lost it and we realized this is not going as planned. We need this rehearsal. Regular rehearsal is out of the way. Let's just take it and run with it, and we did. Our stage manager was not happy.
And the stage manager was my mom. And during the scene where I was not in, I went over to my mom and said, so how are you liking the show? She looks over at me, she just goes, I'm like, okay, do you need us to stop? Because we can stop if you want. Well, I can go back there and tell everyone, hey, we need to do the rest of this as the show now. She's like, nope, you guys go ahead. So we just went.
We did. We just went with it, and it ended up being like our best rehearsal we had done.
It was so fun. It was very fun. One of my favorite moments was so the woman who was playing my mom, Tracy, the one who was the writer of the show, her 2 kids were in it.
They were.
Her 2 kids are in it, and the youngest is just he is the funniest little kid ever.
He is. He's amazing.
I love him.
He can tell you anything about dinosaurs.
Oh yeah, he can tell you about dinosaurs that I've never even heard of.
Mm-hmm.
So he so they're doing so Tracy and the guy who's playing my dad, they're singing their love duet.
Oh, I remember this too.
And finally her son comes out in a tutu skirt.
It was one of her skirts.
It was one of Tracy's skirts.
It was one of her skirts. We put it on him backstage. We're like, all right, Brecken, go.
And he just danced. And finally, I'm just like, okay. And I just went out and danced with him.
Oh, that show, though. So many memories with that show.
Oh, I could just spend a whole 2 hours just talking about everything about that show.
Yep. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have for this episode. Again, thank you so much for being a part of this and talking about theater memories that we shared. And hopefully some of the memories that we shared resonated with some of the viewers. And I will be back next week with another guest talking about different childhood memories we've had. And I hope that you all enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you all next week.
I was active in my high school theater program from sophomore year to senior year. I participated in both fall play and spring musical. I was a cast member in all but my senior play, during which I participated as a crew member. My high school also offered 2 theater classes to upper freshmen, one focusing on the acting side and another focusing on production. in which I participated in both.
My high school theater program, we try to be as inclusive as possible. Of course, in the area that I live, we don't have a huge amount of people of color in our department. We do have a decent amount of, other types of minorities, there's not as many, religious minorities. There's a lot of atheists for theater kids. We've got some Jewish people, mostly Christians and atheists. People of color we have, and they are involved in casting. We really try to avoid shows that, you need specific races for more characters than we have. So, yeah, we try to give everyone an equal opportunity, sexualities, all those things. Everyone has equal opportunity for any role unless it needs specifically to be played by a person of color. However, we don't usually have a show that does that. My teacher, he said, we really want to do Bring It On, but it wouldn't be right. So we are very mindful, or he is very mindful of that. And it wouldn't be right because we are a very white school.
In high school, it was obvious that people were favored to get other roles before other people.
It's hard to say for sure what our biggest production was, but if I had to guess, I'd say Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which was my senior year musical. A lot of freshmen that year came in and just had an interest in theater, so our chorus skyrocketed. Basically enough to fill, I think it was 3 or 4 bleacher risers. And then plus the brothers, Joseph, Jacob, Pharaoh, 5 or 6 narrators. It was just nuts. It was awesome because it was such a high energy show. That many people made it brilliant.
Okay, so funny show stories. I've got a few from a chorus line specifically. I had so much fun with that show. So, first of all, girls' dressing room. We just played Cards Against Humanity between scenes because with a chorus line, the ensemble has a bunch to do, but we have big gaps. So I was an understudy and ensemble, and so I would oftentimes have big gaps. Another thing from that show, I was a dancer in Music in the Mirror, and we had these leotards with these giant open backs, and there was a clip at the top. I did one pirouette, and it came undone. So I'm trying to do this dance, hoping that it'll stay on and everything will stay covered, and afterwards I laughed so hard. Same show, during Music in the Mirror, my friend and I would be behind my mirror before we went, that was kind of what we did for the dance, was we were hiding behind our mirrors until we went out to dance. My friend and I would do the Macarena to each other, to the tune of Music in the Mirror, so we'd be like, all I ever needed. I have a lot from that show. And then middle school theater, when we did Fiddler on the Roof, we kept a loaf of bread in the girls' dressing room every night because we would have the challah from the Shabbos scene left over. And so the girls, I started taking it, and then we would keep it in the girls' dressing room, and we had one guy who was allowed into our dressing room, and he would just eat the bread.
After high school, I was out of theater for a long time, about 10 years, until randomly last winter, I decided to audition for a show, which sadly got canceled by COVID. But then I had the pleasure of being in a virtual production this fall and absolutely plan to continue with it